Well, hello. Welcome back to the third episode in the second series of the Rowan Consulting Short Talks, where we discuss a series of topics and discussions around sort of helpful advice to business owners on managing and engaging teams during times of change and growth. So this series, as many of you know, supports our 6-step program, which is Grow the Business. Which is designed to help you grow your business and to help everybody get back on the bus and going in the right direction. So let's dive into today's session. As business owners, I know myself, we're at a bit of a crossroads. And talking to clients recently, there's a very common theme or trend which is emerging around this third session of lockdown, I think. We're all generally quite tired, trying to sort of see, find some form of normality. And we're dealing with a higher level of uncertainty and control, which for business owners we know is quite a challenge. Engagement with teams is becoming harder, and not just from a geographical perspective, but also it's quite tiring and quite challenging for managers to maintain that level of consistency. So we're finding it hard to recover this time round, I think. We're also know that we probably won't be returning to our original state sort of anytime soon, despite the announcement which came out on Monday. So in terms of original state, we talk about work and the way we work. So how can we build back from where we are, and how can we build back stronger from a state of unknown to being more resilient version of ourselves? If we take the definition of resilience from the Oxford English Dictionary, it has two meanings. The first is the ability of people or things to feel better quickly after something unpleasant, such as sort of shock or injury, or the ability of a substance to return to its original shape after being bent, stretched, or pressed. And as business owners, I think we want to do this quite quickly. It's hard for us, not when we run a business, to not try and get back to some form of normality. We want to serve our clients and support our clients well. And we want to build back stronger, whether that's through revenue or through engagement. So let's further this conversation. Let's talk about resilience for us as business owners and leaders. And to further this conversation, and to get some advice around what this might look like and a structure that it might take, let's introduce our guest speaker for today. I am very pleased to be able to introduce you to Neil Shah, who is Chief Insights Officer at International Wellbeing Insights. Hello, Neil. Welcome to the shed.
Hello. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. Good to see you too. So for those of you who don't know Wellbeing Insights and Stress Management Society, tell us about you and what you do and how you support clients.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Neil Shah. I'm the Chief De-Stressing Officer at the Stress Management Society, which is an international non-profit organisation that I set up 20 years ago, essentially to provide advice, support and guidance to both individuals and organisations that really want to understand the impact of stress, poor mental health, poor well-being, and what we can do about it. We also have a research and consultancy business called International Wellbeing Insights. That's our commercial arm through which we raise our money that funds a lot of our non-commercial activities, which is essentially about really understanding sort of what are the trends and the challenges we're facing in society and what are some of the best practice strategies we can employ. I'm actually doing research around how we can start ensuring that we are staying up to date with the ever-changing world that we find ourselves living in, and what more we can do to support and protect the resilience of our people, whether that be at a corporate, organizational, or at a national level.
Cool. Okay. So I'm interested to know your take on what's happening at the moment. What are you finding in the market? What are you seeing from your clients and things?
So my take on what's happening at the moment, we're living in an episode of Black Mirror. Particularly when you get to the point where reality is more fantastical than fantasy, you don't need to turn on Netflix for sci-fi dystopian visions of a crazy world. You just need to go out the front door. because here we are. And the way I see it, you know, if we'd had this conversation 2 years ago and I said to you in a year, 18 months time, you won't be able to leave your house, you'll be told what to do, who to do it with, what to wear whilst you're doing it, you know, who you can see, hugging and kissing will be, you know, against the law, you won't be able to travel. You always said I was crazy, right? Yet here we are. Now, we only need to look to Will Smith to really understand what's going to happen in the future. If we look at some of the Will Smith's films, I Am Legend, vaccine that turned everyone into zombies, well, that's happening next. I'm not an anti-vaxxer before.
It's supposed to be stress relieving.
And then Independence Day is going to happen and aliens will attack. And again, that sounds crazy, but yes, I'm tongue-in-cheek, but the reality of the situation is that you couldn't make this up. That we find ourselves in really crazy, challenging, unprecedented times. And most of us don't have a toolkit to be able to navigate these times. We weren't prepared for this. We didn't see this coming, yet here we are. So we have to very quickly think about how do we adapt and equip ourselves to navigate these challenging times. And particularly as business owners and leaders, we need to think about not just our own needs, but how do we protect our most valuable asset, our most valuable resource, which is our people. And if you're a large company that has 10, 20, 50,000 employees, you know, if a few of them go down, it's a challenge, right? But if you have 10 employees or 5 employees, one goes down, that's a 10th or a 5th of your workforce. The impact to your organization is exponentially greater than if you've got other people that can pick up the slack. So this is one of the things that when we talk to our corporate clients, they are taking very, very seriously because they understand the impact to bottom line profits, to our ability to operate, to performance. And especially as we've seen some very big, well-known brands disappear over the last 6 to 8 months. Now, for every big name that goes, there's 10, 15, 20 small businesses that disappear that we don't hear about. And this is why it's for me, as much as it feels like another thing to do, another thing to spend time, effort, energy, and money on, and the time, effort, energy, and money that we don't have, I would actually suggest that people consider that this is probably one of the most important things for you to think about right now. You cannot do your job well if the tools are blunt or damaged or struggling, and it's really important that, you know, we consider that the tools of our organization are our people, and are they as sharp and well resourced as they need to be able to navigate these turbulent times.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So let's get into some questions that we've been asked then from some of our followers. And I've sort of condensed these into one. So rather than going through sort of all of them, we've sort of condensed them into one. So let's talk about then, what are the signs of low resilience? How might they sort of show up in terms of the workplace?
Now, firstly, just before I answer that question, I need to give you a bit of a background here, because people think that some people are just naturally more resilient than others. Resilience isn't nature, it's nurture. Nobody comes into this world with a higher degree of resilience, genetically primed into them. Well, you know, we could go off on a tangent and talk about epigenetics, but let's just kind of keep it to the science as it's accepted at the moment. We're a product of our environment. We're a product of the experiences that we have growing up, family settings, the society we live in, socioeconomic background, etc. So there are some people that, in the face of extreme challenge and pressure, will be able to cope. And there are some people, for a variety of different reasons, will struggle. Now, the reason I'm saying it's nurture, not nature, or primarily nurture, not nature, is it doesn't matter what your starting point is. We can all take the time and invest the energy to increase our resilience, regardless of external circumstances, which is why there are some people, when literally the world is falling to pieces around them, can keep calm and collected, can be able to keep the kind of that sense of groundedness and to maintain their center, regardless of external circumstances. That is the bit that is firmly within our control, is how we choose to react and respond to external circumstances. So a sign of low resilience is, you know, the printer runs out of cartridge, you need to print something, and they people lose their marbles. They will be effing and blinding and screaming or whatever. And you're looking at it, it's like, that's such a small thing. You're laughing because you probably had one of those moments at some point. I put my hand up, I have as well. It's like something really insignificant. Like,
it's usually the coffee machine doesn't work. That's when my world falls apart.
Yeah, it happened to me the other day. I spilled some coffee on my shirt, and I was just like, I'm at home at the moment. I could have just gone up and got changed, and I was like really upset. And I was like, why did I blow that out of proportion? And then I thought about it. I hadn't slept well. My house is a building site. I've got all of these different things going on. I'm trying to hold it all together. And that became the straw that broke the camel's back. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So when we talk about resilience, ultimately, if you imagine yourself as a bridge, whether it's Tower Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, Sydney Harbour Bridge, every bridge on the planet can only take a finite amount of load. If you start putting cars, lorries, trucks, double-decker buses, cruise ships, International Space Station, etc. If you put enough load onto any bridge, eventually it's going to collapse, right? But before it collapses, you'll know because it will bow, buckle, groan, and creak. Now, we are the same, both as individuals, as teams, and across our whole organization. That any individual group or collective that has too much pressure on them will ultimately collapse if it's excessive pressure extended periods of time. But before the collapse comes, you'll know because there'll be those early signs of bowing, groaning, creaking, cracking, fracturing. At that point, you've got one of two choices. We take the pressure off or we increase the resilience. We do some bridge strengthening exercises. So signs of low resilience are at an individual level, radical mood swings, turning to substances, drinking more, smoking more, eating more sugar, drinking more coffee, turning to recreational drugs or pharmaceutical interventions. It could be in extreme mood swings. It could be conflict because you're more snappy and irritable with the people around you. It could be working longer hours but not necessarily getting more done. Dips in performance, quality and output diminishes. It could be how you present yourself. Now, I know, obviously, in the world that we live in now, we're all dressed from the waist up, but you're sat there in your underpants and you literally just splashing water on your face before the talk. That's what happens, right, in the new reality.
Speak for yourself.
But joking aside, you can't tell, right? Because, if someone walks into the office, you kind of can tell that they're taking pride in their appearance. In a virtual world, it's a lot harder to be able to pick up those subtle signs and the non-verbal behaviors, non-verbal communication. We may see people losing their sense of humor and being less engaged, again, because many of us are finding ourselves in back-to-back Zoom calls and we talk about the thing rather than how you doing, or just the kind of the water cooler, coffee machine type moments where you talk about how your kids getting on at school or how's your football team doing or whatever, which actually are, for me, as important for relationship building purposes as talking about the functional, technical, operational matters. So kind of the things that we do to develop a relationship start to diminish. Relationships actually start to suffer. So these are all signs of low resilience, because we stop caring about kind of the bits that bring joy to life, if that makes sense. At a team level, performance, productivity, output drops, more conflict, more disputes. You may have people going off sick, and it might not necessarily be with stress or mental health related issues. I'm sure we all agree that when you are struggling, you are more susceptible to illness. Now, it's interesting. We live in a world where you're told, keep your distance, sanitize, wear a mask. I don't see anyone talking about managing your stress and your emotional state. Whereas actually, it's very clear biologically that when you are stressed, you are more susceptible to illness because your immune system is suppressed, right? I don't see anyone mentioning that, which for me is surprising, because we live in a world that is filled with fear and stress. And actually that is probably going to have a deeper impact on your immune system than all of the other things that we're being told to do. But organizationally, this is where it can have an impact on the reputation of the organization. It can have an impact on output. It can have an impact on your ability to survive in these times. So this is, I know it's often seen as kind of, it's a nice to do thing. They even call it soft skills, which really demeans it, because actually these are core skills that are required to function and thrive as a business, yet we demean them by calling them soft skills. So in answer to your question, low resilience is a whole range of things, which include mental, emotional, physical output, and it includes bottom line profits as well. Because when people are well resourced and they're in a good place, they perform well, and that has a direct impact on performance. And in turn, if you're a profit-making organization, will have an impact on your ability to make money.
Mm. And I think, sometimes that's lost, isn't it? Or the stages to, it's very quick to jump to the profitability loss, It's very quick to jump to that, when actually like you said, it's what's been loaded on top of that before we even get to that point. And I think that's lost in the translation.
And there was 2 points that we raised there about what can you do if the bridge is bowing and if the bridge is bowing and buckling, if there is signs of low resilience or impacted resilience. As we mentioned, there are 2 choices. We take the load off. In normal circumstances, you could think about, could I decrease the pressure or change the way we're doing things? We're very limited at the moment because we have very little control. We did some research recently. We were working with a big technology company, Huawei, and we're looking at the impact to society of stress, mental health, and well-being and resilience as a result of the current situation. We found that the 3 things that were really impacting people were the sense of disconnection, loneliness, isolation, and uncertainty of not knowing what's going to happen next or how things are going to play out. And even when we're told this was going to happen next, people lost trust in that because we've been told this before and it hasn't happened. So you're prepared to reopen your business, or you think this is over, and then it's not. So this is really one of the key things. We don't have much control of what we can do on the load on the bridge, but what we have absolute control over is what action we can take to start to fix the bridge. Now, yes, some of the options have been taken away from us, but there's still many things that we can do that are within our power. So this is the key thing that I encourage everyone listening to this discussion today to consider, is what can you do to increase, number one, your resilience, the resilience of your team, and that of your whole organization, by literally considering strategies to strengthen those bridges.
Yeah, great analogy. I love it. I know we've talked about it before, haven't we, in terms of the bridge of resilience, and I think it's really, I think it really resonates from my side. Okay, so the next sort of group of questions are around, this is more sort of, I think, from sort of managers' perspective. How do I keep my head up when I'm struggling? And I think, from an employee perspective, I think there is collaboration, and there is huge benefit in talking, sharing. And I think, where this comes from is from the manager's perspective of, who do we talk to? How do we, if I'm showing signs of what we discussed in terms of lack of resilience, then how do they keep their head up when they're struggling?
Now, that's an interesting question, and I may give you an answer that you maybe not what people want to hear. Vulnerability has for far too long been seen as a sign of weakness. Mm-hmm. I disagree with that. I think vulnerability is a strength. There are phrases that derive from kind of the very masculine. When I say masculine, it's not male female, it's the masculine energy, if that makes sense. Of kind of the business world, or how we're told to be in business, is to be coming from that that place of like, pull your socks up and get on with it, soldier on, grown men don't cry, etc. etc. It's just like, you got to put a face on it. I disagree with that. I think there's a new style of leadership that's been coming through for a while now, and I think it's really important that we do start to consider how we are willing to be more authentic, because guess what? It's okay to not be okay. And for me, I've been running business since I was 24, which obviously is only 3 years. No, but joking aside, it's more than 2 decades I've been running businesses, and I was that person that would put a face on it. It's like, no, I'm fine. And the days I'll be sitting, at home with my head in my hands, wondering how I was going to get through the next couple of days. Where I found that actually being able to express that, you know what, guys, this is how I am today. This is what's going on for me. I'm not offloading. I'm not like sharing all of my deepest, darkest secrets, but being willing to say, look, I am struggling a little bit today, and here's the support that I need. And actually, by being willing to do that, you're also making it okay for others to do that too. So it's not necessarily you're going through the kind of the deepest, darkest aspects of your personal relationships or whatever else that's causing you stress or is impacting your well-being, but being willing to just open up and say, look, you know what, I'm having a day today where I'm not feeling so great. You may have particular members of the team that you can talk to, or it may be that they just know how you're doing, and they might be a little bit more supportive, or a little bit more kinder with their expectations of you.
Mm.
So, and this is a key thing, but also it's important that you have a support network, because being a business leader can be a very lonely place. I know this because I am one myself, and there are times where, you wonder, like, how you're going to get through the day because you have no one to express that to. And you might not feel appropriate to express to your partner or your family. I'm really lucky. I've got a member of our team, Laurie, who's our office manager. She's more like our de facto MD, really, but she'd be the person I'd talk to about everything. So she's not my boss. I'm her manager technically, but the relationship we have is more like, if I was to go to someone that would be my manager, it would be her. She's not, but that's the role she plays for me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Is there someone in your team that you can do that with, that you can turn to? Maybe a kind of a calm head, or someone with a bit more experience? Or is there someone outside of your business that you can build that relationship with? Because I feel it's really important that we do have people we can talk to. We do develop a support network. And I think that's really important that we all consider, who is your support network? Who can you turn to for fun? Who can you turn to for a reality check? Who can you turn to for a distraction? Who can you turn to, if there's an emergency, if you need some advice about some challenge you're facing in your business? Or it could be that you work with a coach or a professional. The particularly smaller business, you may not have a HR team, but is that something that you could bring in, so you've got a professional you can talk to that could help you with that?
Mm. And I know that, that resonates with a lot of our, our coaching clients. I know, most of the time, business owners, in fairness, when we're sort of talking to them in terms of organizational coaching, they know the answers, but what they miss is that connectivity, like you said, that support network. I can have conversations with clients where I can nod and say, and then they come up with the answer, and I go, okay, how do you feel about that? And they go, yeah, I feel good. And it's just the talking of it, it's just that sharing that I think gets people into a good headspace, isn't it? It's having somebody who is there. So I think
I'm laughing. You just described a kind of a stereotypical, as they would portray on a comedy set on television, counselling session. The client sits on the couch for an hour. The counsellor nods at the end of the session. How do you feel about that? Oh, great, and that's it. It's like, job done. As much as we're joking, that sometimes you need a sounding board. You need someone that you can kind of just offload to, that is going to listen.
Yeah,
non-judgmentally. I think that's really important. So
yeah, and I think support network is wider, isn't it? I have two very good friends, and one I go to for emotional support, and the other one I go to for what we call the scientific support. So if I want a cold, hard, straightforward, kick up the arse answer, I go to this person. If I want emotional engagement and somebody who, when I say poor me, will go, it's okay, I go to her. I wouldn't switch that round, because I'd get a very different response from either of them if I did. So
absolutely,
it's about using what you've got, I think, isn't it?
Cool.
Okay, so we've talked about what we can see, and we've talked about it from a manager's perspective. Let's have a quick sort of conversation then around sort of engaging teams that are struggling. In the introduction, I was just saying that we're at a point where, as business owners, we want to get back to some form of normality. We want to start serving and supporting our clients, and we want to build back stronger from both revenue and engagement. So one not at the detriment of the other. So the next set of questions were very much around sort of engaging teams that are struggling. Talk to me about that. What how from a distance, but also from re-engaging back in again now with people coming back in. How do we re-engage those? How do we get their resilience up?
May I ask you a question, Karen?
Yeah.
From your perspective, if someone uses the term engagement, what does that mean to you?
I think engagement, it's massive. It's huge. Because it's not the normal how are you, it's endless, isn't it? How we do it, who we do it with, when we do it, how long we do it for, an individual's perspective on what they see as engagement. It's massive. It's a big ball of
absolutely. And that's why I asked the question, because it's huge, and we could spend hours on this subject alone. From our perspective, there's three types of engagement. Intellectual engagement, so you're kind of engaging someone from a mental perspective. Emotional engagement, you're connecting them more from that seat of emotion. And then social engagement, which is the collective, is where we're moving ourselves collectively towards actions. Now, it's interesting because you said, well, there's the basic, how are you? If I asked you, how are you? How would you respond to that question?
Oh, again, we've had this conversation. I think, again, how are you? What I tell you and what you see, will probably be very different from how I'm feeling, like behind the facade, isn't it?
And this is the point. The most engagement is complete BS. It's a complete waste of time. Because when somebody asks you, how are you, you will have your default response. What is your default response to the how are you question?
Me personally, depending on what day of the week it is and how much coffee I've had, yeah, it's usually, yeah, I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. I would normally say I'm wonderful. Now, the chances are on many, if not most occasions, when you say I'm great or I say I'm wonderful, we're lying. But equally, the person asking the question is also lying. They're not really interested in how you are. Because if you ask me again, Neil, how are you really? I say, do you know what? I've not slept for 3 days. I've got builders in the house. I've got all this stuff going on with work. Doesn't look like we're going to have our lives back until June. I don't know how much more of this can take. It just feels like the walls are closing in my head. I feel like I'm going to explode. And you'll be like, whoa, Neil, I just asked you how you are. Don't give me your life story. So do you see what I mean? It's like we're in this kind of this little dance that we do where we don't really want to engage with you because you don't really want to know.
Uh-huh.
So when it comes to engagement, it's number one, asking the right questions, but number two, ensuring that people are comfortable with the responses they're going to get. Because if you go about this task well and you really do engage people and you start getting some feedback, are you prepared to be able to respond to what comes up, even if it's not comfortable? So this is a key thing. And it goes back to the point I said earlier, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Because the world we live in right now, if you are uncomfortable being uncomfortable, you're going to struggle. Because people think that there's still holding on to this romantic notion that at some point we're going to go back to how things used to be. I'm sorry to break this to you, it ain't happening anytime soon, if ever. There's a very strong possibility, because of the length of time this has gone on, this is going to have a permanent shift in the ways that we live our lives, the ways that we work, the way that we communicate, the way that we function as a society. So this is why it's ultra important that we do get better at engaging people. And there's many different ways to do that. The basic one we just talked about is the how are you? We were involved in a campaign a couple of years ago called #AskTwice. So if I say to you, how are you? And you say, I'm great. And I say, but how are you really, Karen? Would you answer differently the second time?
Quite possibly, yeah. I think there's a genuineness if you ask twice, isn't there?
Absolutely. So if you're thinking of a simple thing that you can do to more effectively engage your people, ask them again, or actually show that you really are interested. Now, here's the thing: even if you're asking the right questions, it doesn't mean that people automatically are going to open up straight away. You have to ensure that you are committed to this. And that means that you have to really change your approach long term. Because particularly if your colleagues know that you've been listening to this Shed talk about resilience, and, oh yeah, I saw that in their diary, they were listening to that thing, just keep quiet and this moment will pass, right? But if you keep asking, after a while, people get used to you asking around their welfare, around their resilience. And after a while, there'll be one person that will engage with that. Right, and that will open the floodgates. And this is typically how it works: is you get kind of the early adopters that engage. You think, actually, no, there's a commitment here to really understanding our welfare and our well-being. Maybe I want to engage with this. But it could be sort of verbal dialogues. It could be catching up for sort of team meetings that are not work related. It's just like, well, let's have coffee together. Let's have a drink together. Let's do like a pub quiz. Actually showing that even in a virtual environment, we're willing to have time together as a group of people. It could be surveys. It could be putting out surveys, employee engagement surveys and that kind of thing. There's a whole variety of different things that we can do. I'm not sitting here saying this is what you must do, but I'm going to ask you to consider, what can you do to, number one, mentally engage people? That could be through sending out information, through meetings, that kind of thing. Emotional engagement is where you get people excited, or you get people to the point where they're able to drop into something deeper than just what's going on up here. And then the social engagement is where we are now making commitments to take action together. And that's where you enter the field of the domain of culture change. So, as I said, we could spend a very long time talking about engagement, but really the three things are social engagement, emotional engagement, and intellectual engagement. Now, there's measures for this. intellectual engagement, the measure of your intellectual capacity is IQ. Emotional engagement, your measure of intellectual capacity, emotional capacity is EQ. Most people have heard of EQ and IQ. The one that most people haven't heard of is there's a measure for social capacity and social engagement, which is social quotient, SQ. So my suggestion would be, how do you develop all three of those within your organization?
And it's a good point. Thinking now straight off the top of my head, I think the traditional, going back to that traditional engagement aspect, I think is around the heart, isn't it? I think that's, and perhaps the social. I mean, we all know that probably we're all socially clapped out on Zoom, coffees, cocktail nights, quizzes, those types of things, especially as an introvert. So I think the default position is to go for heart and social. But my question would be, to the listeners, would be around, when was the last time you looked at the intellectual, and when did you look at all three as a collective to ensure that that's what it fits? Because I think, some of them culturally, we've got clients who are manufacturing, construction, engineering. That has a very different social connection to something which is more the retail, hospitality, service side that we deal with, and that, like you said, stems into the sort of, whole separate shed talk on cultural side. So.
But if you think of it as a triangle, top of the triangle is IQ, SQ, EQ. You need all three in place to have actual engagement. If you've got one or two, it's not going to lead to long-term lasting change.
Yeah.
It's not going to lead to increased resilience. You need to have literally all three of those corners of the triangle in place to get to the sweet spot in the middle, which is actual engagement.
Yeah. Perhaps that's another shed talk we should be doing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there we go. We'll put that one out there to anyone who is interested.
Good.
Okay, so yeah, really good conversation. I'm just conscious sort of from a time perspective, but there's lots of things. I've been scribbling sort of lots of notes while we've been talking, and I think there's a lot in there. Hopefully people will have a sort of listen back a couple of times to sort of pick up on some of those gems. But I think for me, it's there's a lot sort of saying purpose-led, authentic leadership.
Absolutely. I
think there's a lot in terms of, I love the ask twice. I think that's something really simple that people can potentially take away and meaningfully, authentically do it. And I think the thing around, like you said, the intellectual, the emotional, and the social side, I think is a real big, something for people to look at, I think, and check in with. So
there's one more big one, and this is just for you, because obviously this is a shed talk, right? So I have an acronym for you. The SHED acronym. And this, for me, are the four key, if not most important areas to develop your resilience. So SHED talk: sleep, hydration, exercise, and diet.
Hey, boom. That's straight off the top of your head. I'm very impressed.
So that's just for you. You can have that one. So sleep, ultimately, even though we're at home, a lot of people are really struggling with sleep at the moment because it feels quite oppressive. Many people are suffering from cabin fever. We are, statistically speaking, there's 3 or 4 different studies I've seen that alcohol consumption has gone up because people are struggling and they turn to alcohol as a crutch. That can lead to dehydration. You may be drinking more coffee because you're working from your kitchen or you've got coffee on tap. We're not getting as much exercise because the gyms aren't open. So we need to think outside the box about how we get our exercise, whether you do some fitness classes at home or you walk 3 times as much as you normally do. And diet, again, your fridge is within walking distance and people getting through their lockdown snacks, the 3 minutes after getting back from the supermarket. So I'm going to ask you to put a Post-it note up on your computers or on your whiteboard. SHED: sleep, hydration, exercise, and diet. Have you got those 4 important cornerstones of your well-being, of your resilience in place? Because actually doing those 4 is going to make your bridge stronger.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I'm going to write that up on my board right behind me when we've hung up. I shall keep it there when I do my other ones as well, and then we can just keep revisiting. Okay, so you've answered probably pretty much the start of the next question. So we always ask sort of our speakers at the end of these sessions, if you could give away sort of 2 tips that leaders and business owners can go away and can do, right now or from tomorrow morning. And I can pick 2 already from what you've said. What would those two things be? Those quick wins?
For an individual, particularly if you're not going into work at the moment, and you are working from home, which can be really challenging, a lot of people don't have delineation or demarcation between work and home. Work used to be a destination for most of us. Now it's an activity. That may just sound like pedantics, but there's a significant difference, because you had the delineation between work, which was the commute. I'm going to ask everyone listening today to create yourself a commute, which means every morning before you start work, you get dressed, brush your teeth, have a shower, have your cup of coffee, and then leave the house. Even if you're just walking around the block, if you've got a dog, wonderful, your dog's gonna love you. So walk around the block, come back. When you arrive back into your home, you've now arrived at work. Now, again, like, you know, for you, Karen, that would be before you arrive at the shed. You create a commute, and not just down the garden path, actually create, you know, at least a 5 to 10 minute commute. You arrive in the shed. When you finish your day, you close the shed, you walk around the block, give yourself this fake commute, and then arrive back at home. Those few minutes give you kind of the decompression time between those two spaces, two environments. I think that's ultra important. That has been one of the most popular tips we've provided over the last 6 months. And also the second tip would be about creating time and space for non-functional, non-technical, non-operational catch-ups with your people. Create virtual water cooler coffee machine moments.
Yeah. And like you said, you know, those things, you know, they will become the new norm, won't they? Because, you know, it's going to be a while, you know, even if we do see some light on the end of the tunnel. But yeah, it's going to be a while before, you know, before we sort of see, you know, before we see that. I believe that,
yeah, there's a couple of things I just want to mention.
Absolutely.
April is Stress Awareness Month. So this is kind of, we've got a drive to just raise awareness around stress and mental health and well-being. So we've developed tons and tons of free resources, which are on our website, which is www.stress.org.uk/stress-awareness-month. And that's just literally, there's tons of free stuff. We've also got a couple of public courses coming up, because obviously if you've got a smaller team, you may not want to run a session for your whole team. So there's public courses, and they're very inexpensive. They start from like £47 per person, where you come along and spend a couple of hours looking at how you can upskill your team or yourselves with resilience. We've also got manager sessions as well. So if anyone would like to spend more time with us, please do get in touch, and we'd love to be able to help. I know you've got the links. I'm sure you'll share them.
Yes, yeah. I was just going to say, for anyone who is interested in either, you know, progressing the conversation with Neil and his team, or, you know, wants to sort of talk to us further in terms of any additional sort of information, we will of course make those links available to you, you know, via the show notes, and they'll also be available sort of on our website within a time frame of them going back up.
Last thing I want to say,
Yeah.
Everybody loves a good challenge. And, you know, found during lockdown, people were doing all kinds of challenges, from couch to 5K or banana breads or whatever else. So we've created a 30-day challenge as well. So it's a 30 days to resilience. So every month we'll put up a new challenge on our website. This is, again, it's all free of charge. It's stress.org.uk/30-day challenge. And it's basically how you can then make a commitment and create a plan for yourself over a 30-day period to start forming new habits and behaviors that serve you in building your resilience. So obviously we will happily share tips on how to do that, but this is something, again, I'm going to encourage everyone to do. 20 to 28 days to form a new habit or behavior. Are you willing to make a commitment over the next 30 days to build the resilience for yourself, for your team, and potentially for your whole organization? And if so, make that commitment and take action against that straight away.
Okay, drop the link into the chat for me, and then what I'll do is I'll make sure it gets, you know, it gets shared back out again, because I think that is the thing. You know, we now know from the announcement on Monday that you know, we are gonna hopefully sort of start seeing the, you know, the return to the workplace. And I think, you know, from people who have been off for excellent, thanks for that. For people who have been off for a period of time, you know, retail, hospitality, you know, people who have been furloughed. You know, we've now been told on Monday, we've got an exit strategy to get out of this and to get back into the work again. And I think for some people, that's going to be hard. That's going to be really hard. You know, we've got, you know, retail and hospitality in our client list. And for them, you know, this is the third time that we've been told we can open, and we're on the out. You only have to listen to the news And, you know, people are saying, okay, well, please let this be the last time, and please let's make sure we do it this time, you know, to build that resilience back up again, I think is critical right now.
Yeah, we've had a lot of false dawns, so I think it's really important that we are taking the time to ensure ourselves and our team are in the best possible place to cope with whatever is going to unfold over the next few months.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you again. Very much appreciated. I'm sure there are a couple of other Shed Talks that we will be inviting you back for. In case.
You're never going to think of Shed in the same way after this.
I'm not. I'm gonna have to. I'll have to change it all. I'll have to be a whole new branding exercise for me. For those, thank you very much for listening, everybody. For those of you who are listening on feedback, we will obviously put the links into the show notes, or you can go to our website, which is www.rowanhr.com. And we will put the full download available for you to pick up from there. We will also make sure that all of the links that Neil has kindly given us will be in there as well. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much for joining us. This has been a Shed Talk from Rowan Consulting, HR and organisational design specialists working with business owners and leaders to structure your business for change and growth, as well as developing your leaders and managing your people. If you've enjoyed this Shed Talk, we would be very grateful if you would share it out and send us some comments. It's always gratefully received. Or if you want to subscribe to any of our links, then you can by simply emailing us at hello@rowanhr.com, subscribing via our website, rowanhr.com, or by following us on any of our social media channels. What we'll do, Neil, is we'll also put your social media channels up on our links a little bit later on. So feel free to go visit Neil's site and team. And in the meantime, until next time, we wish you well. Stay well. I was going to say stay warm, but it's starting to improve with the weather now. And we will see you very, very shortly. Thank you very much. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.